right, so to begin, my name is Fabiola Garza, and I'm an illustrator here in Orlando, Florida. I currently work for the Walt Disney Company full-time as an artist for merchandise, and no, I don't work directly on the movies, but I do work closely with the film studios to make sure everything I'm creating is in line with whatever new story they're coming up with. So if you see up here, I think it's on your left, is the image that I drew, and then you can see it applied to a purse that you would get in stores. It's our new characters, Asha and Star. The movie's coming out next week, and I'm really excited. I don't know what it's gonna be like, but I have some idea, and so it's gonna be really exciting. I'm also a cradle Catholic, and I was born in Mexico City, and I've lived in Turkey, Colombia, and the USA. My mom and father are devout Catholics, and they set a great foundation for me. If not in terms of catechesis, then certainly in devotion. I come from a very devout family in general. My grandmother went to daily mass, taught me to say my prayers, and had incredible trust in God and our Blessed Mother. Just as my faith was forming as a young child, there was nothing that came as naturally to me as creativity. And nothing has changed much. I still love unicorns and my mom, so, that's how life goes, apparently. I loved to draw from a young age, and according to my dad, everything I did was a masterpiece. I knew from early on that I wanted to work for Disney. The first time I thought God must exist was while watching Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. It was just so incredibly beautiful and moving and had no particular need to exist that I believed there had to be a higher power. And it's my very first memory where I remember thinking about God. I also remember the first time I sinned. I was in kindergarten, and all the kids were making little caterpillars out of paper. You know when you take 2 strips of paper and fold them over and over again until you have a little accordion? Well, I looked at the girl next to me, and I saw how much better hers was than mine. I felt jealousy and anger and rage, and the moment I saw that she got distracted, I took her caterpillar and I chucked it in the bin. It was clearly really important to be the best. And that was a feeling I would feel many times over the years. Every time I saw someone create a piece of art better than mine. I never threw other people's art in the trash again, but I definitely felt jealous. I even felt less worthy. I didn't realize it then, but art was a bit of an idol, one tied to my self-worth. Despite my Christian upbringing, I had never been taught that God was not simply an aside, a cushion to fall on when things were rough, but the source of all love, and that I was worthy not because of what I brought to the table, but because I am his beloved daughter. I measured my worth by how good my art was, but also by so many other things. If boys liked me, if I was pretty, grades, etc. Because of this, I think you can imagine that as a teenager, managing emotions was pretty rough. I am by nature pretty sensitive, so this was a hard time in my life. And even though I didn't really understand the whole of Christ's revelation, I was also pretty naturally spiritual. And I wrote down my prayers in my journal, investigated whether my 6th grade crush believed in God, and was pretty annoyed when other kids in my confirmation class didn't take it seriously. Art-wise, in high school, I was the best in my class. Internally, though, I was pretty lonely and had trouble connecting with others. But I still really wanted to have something to show for myself, so I agreed to do a mural of the Odyssey my senior year. It's absolutely massive. The canvases would not fit upright in my basement, which is where I painted it. And I took up the entire basement, which I'm sure my mom loved. It's where our computer was. And I don't know why, but I really loved doing it. And if you really have the need to go see it, it's still up at the Wellesley High School Library in Massachusetts. So if you ever make a trip there, you know, I'm not sure if it's worth your time, but that's fine. So life went on, and I graduated, and then came college. I went to Rhode Island School of Design, and it was an absolute whirlwind. A true emotional roller coaster, where I messed up a lot, learned a lot, and came out stronger in my faith. My school was right next to Brown University. And if you know anything about Brown, it's insanely secular and liberal. And my art school was that, and then some. I'm pretty sure if my parents knew where they were sending me, they would have never sent me there in the first place. Not to get too crude, but when your school's mascot is, I was gonna say it, but I'm not gonna say it because it's just not appropriate, but let's just say it's just not a place where you're likely to find or be surrounded by morality. I didn't meet many Catholics, and those who started school as practicing Catholics, ended up not going to Mass anymore within the first semester. I did, however, meet plenty of Protestants and some people that were wholesome. We watched Disney movies and wore costumes to movie premieres, and I was mostly spared from the hedonism around me. In terms of talking about faith, however, most of my life was marked by a silent rule of not talking about faith in school. It's just not something you did. It was live and let live, but you didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings, so you didn't really talk about it. And the idea of living out my faith in a community was actually something completely foreign to me. But something forced me to do just that. I dated an evangelical Protestant, and a pretty anti-Catholic one at that. I don't think he is anymore. We hope. Why he was dating me, I have no idea, and why I was dating him, I'm not sure. But hormones and youth and the need for affirmation. So we inevitably started to talk about religion. I cried a lot during our discussions, feeling cornered and not knowing exactly how to defend my faith. My father was, of course, concerned and expressed that he was worried that I was dating a Protestant. So like every good Catholic, he gave me a tract by Scott Hahn. Everybody does. I started to learn about the beauty of the Eucharist, the historicity of the faith, etc. But as I listened, I grew angrier and angrier. Why had my dad waited until this moment to teach me all of these amazing things? I would later learn that his concern for my situation compelled him to learn more about the faith himself. Thus began a long intellectual journey, one that led me to adoration and to finally understand God's true place as Lord over my life. So my senior year, I took a children's book writing and illustrating class, and for my final project, I decided to tell the story of the young life of John Paul II. I already knew he was amazing, but when I learned about all he went through in his youth, I was just so inspired by the hope he kept and the love that he shared. I ended up reading the mock-up book to the whole class. I still remember a non-religious classmate of mine come up to me in tears to tell me how much she liked it. After college, and after the end of that romantic relationship, I sought a faith community. And for the first time, I really experienced what it was like to feel God's love through Christian friendship. I was not loved because I was a good artist, but because I was myself. It changed the way I viewed myself and I understood why faith is not supposed to be lived out on an island. That was never God's intention. That is why we are a body of believers, each with our own vocation and mission and story, but still connected. We cannot be apart. When I am weak, I am held up. When others are suffering, I can hold them. Satan wants to isolate us. God wants us to be a family. My first job out of college was at a video game company, working on a fantasy video game, which was a whole lot of fun. I got to design stuff for elves and dwarves, and everyone was super nice, probably because I was only one of 2 female artists at the time. Then, all of a sudden, that company went bankrupt. I had no idea what to do. I had to apply for jobs, and, my father came up to me and he gave me a suggestion. He said, "Why don't you try to publish your college book project, the one about John Paul II's youth?" My father had always championed my work, and so I began. And therein started one of the best and then also most difficult periods of my life. When I started, I was blissful. I felt like I was doing exactly what I was born to do. I enjoyed every second of what I was doing. I even got into a new relationship, and if anyone was to guess my future fortune, nothing but good things could be seen on the horizon. Then the relationship ended abruptly, and soon I was off to World Youth Day in Brazil. Now, the first time I went to World Youth Day in Spain, I had been on cloud 9 the entire time. I loved that trip. I still love that trip. It was just so amazing. But that time, I was so happy. And this time, in Brazil, everything started to feel gray and dark. It was just such a strange feeling. Not sadness. Sadness did not really feel that way. But I started to feel this horrible weight and this ache in my body. As I waited on the beach to catch a glimpse of Pope Francis, I got a call from the publisher I had submitted my manuscript to. They said they wanted to publish the book, but that they needed it finished in 2 months and a half. 82 pages in 2 months and a half, fully illustrated. I can't express to you how insane that is. It's crazy. But I said yes because I really wanted to do it. It's a thing I do when it comes to projects. I say yes and figure it out later. And I also just really didn't want to let whatever was going on with me, the darkness, to win. So I was like, no matter what I'm feeling, no matter how this goes, I'm gonna say yes and get this done. To this day, I cannot tell you how I finished the book. To me, it has always been a miracle. Completing it while feeling so physically and mentally drained is something I don't wish on my worst enemy. I felt betrayed by God. After all, Christians are supposed to be happy all the time, and this was supposed to be a happy time. Despite that, I felt like I had to finish the book, and I still believed I was made to do it. I'd fall to my knees during Mass pleading for help, praying to feel better. I held on to that cross of suffering while trying every step in the book to heal my brain and my body. I finished through sheer grit, and it was sent to print. I think no one looking at the finished product, or anybody who listened or watched to any of the interviews of me promoting it, could have guessed what I was going through. Eventually, I did heal, slowly, through the help of friends, prayer, and the right help. I really wish that hadn't been the making of story, the making of the book story, but I do know that that period of my life has given me so much more compassion and deeper understanding of what God's love really means. Not that he will give us what we want if we believe in him, but that he is with us at every moment, and that our suffering means something, because our suffering is connected to his own by virtue of being part of his body. And there has been so much fruit that has come from that book. A month ago, I was randomly connected with someone who said, "You're the author of that book? We named our son John Paul because of that book." There are some things as an artist I feel I have to make, that it is my calling to make. That was one of them. And I am so happy God helped me do it. A few weeks ago, I got a call from the same publisher letting me know they are going to print a special 10-year anniversary edition. I cannot believe it's been a decade, but even more so that the book is worthy of a special edition. But truly, it's the lives that have been touched that feels like the biggest hug from God. Just knowing that it's out there and touching people's heart is just a huge affirmation to keep saying yes to the projects he puts on my heart. Even among my successes, I've been blessed to be a part of some really cool things, this being one of them. There is something I try to remind myself of. Just because a work is successful and even brings fruit, it does not make me a saint. My brother can tell you. It's sort of an inside joke, and it really is an inside joke. We do say this. It goes, if someone comes up to me and says you're a saint, I'll roll my eyes. And I'll say, yes, please dispel them of that notion. I'd be so embarrassed. What really matters is the love I am able to give when no one's watching. My day-to-day actions. By far, the most common question I get is, how do you live out your faith in a secular job? Personally, I think it can be even more difficult to live out your faith in a specifically religious job, because you can confuse your job title with personal holiness. The truth is, if you are faithful, your work will reflect that. If I die and all I'm remembered for is how great my art was and not how I loved, I'll be disappointed in myself. But I hope I grow in intimacy with the Lord as I age, and that God's grace will transform me so that my friends and family can say I loved well. It is not today, but hopefully it will be someday.